Every little jab, every silent rejection, it used to break you, but there comes a point where survival demands evolution. The strongest version of you isn't numb, it's selective. You begin to master your emotions, not suppress them. You stop giving others the weapon to control your peace. Because when you train yourself to respond without flinching, the world loses its power to wound you, and you gain the power to rise untouched. In a few moments, I will teach you how to train your mind to stay calm, unshaken, and unhurt, no matter what happens. You cannot be broken unless you allow it. You were not born fragile. You were born with a mind that commands the body, not the other way around. And yet, somewhere along the way, you started reacting to life like a leaf in the wind. Every slight, every glare, every careless word knocking you off center. But ask yourself, can anyone truly hurt you unless you give them permission? That's the trap, believing that your peace belongs to someone else. Pain is inevitable, but suffering? That's often a choice made quietly, moment by moment, in how you respond. When a man controls how he responds, he controls the outcome. When he doesn't, he becomes a puppet. The moment you decide nothing can touch your peace unless you invite it in, you stop being a victim of circumstance and begin shaping it. So how do you begin to act unhurt even when the world throws its worst? First, stop reacting in the moment. Let silence be your armor. Let time do the talking. A man who pauses before he responds owns every room he enters. Picture this. Someone mocks you in front of others. Your old self would flare, defend, explain, but now you smile, quietly, even calmly. You give them nothing to feed off. That's silence, that's power. Now ask yourself, why do you rush to defend your worth to those who don't see it? Why give energy to those who drain you? Every time you react, you reinforce their power over you. But every time you stay composed, you build strength inside you they can't reach. Remember, the strongest man in the room isn't the loudest. He's the one who could speak but chooses not to. You become that man, not by denying pain, but by refusing to be ruled by it. What you ignore, you outgrow. Every insult, every rejection, every cold shoulder, it used to burn you until you learned that attention gives fuel. What you feed grows, what you ignore starves. And when you learn to ignore what once tore you apart, you begin to outgrow it. And that's not indifference, that's evolution. You've been conditioned to believe that if you don't fight back, you're weak. But silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom wrapped in discipline. The oak does not tremble with every wind. It stands still, silent, watchful. But how do you cultivate that stillness? You begin by examining what truly matters. Not every comment deserves a reaction. Not every battle is worth the wound. Discipline begins when you start conserving your energy for the fights that build your character, not the ones that flatter your pride. Imagine this. Someone spreads lies about you behind your back. You hear about it. Every bone in you wants to confront them, but instead, you keep building. You keep showing up. You let time reveal truth, and it always does. Have you noticed how the more you respond, the more you're dragged into cycles that weaken you? But when you ignore noise, you rise above it. That's not escape, it's elevation. And elevation gives you perspective. So next time your emotions demand a reaction, pause and ask, will this matter tomorrow? Will this decision feed my future or just my ego? Most of the time, the answer will guide you towards silence. And in that silence, you'll discover an unshakable self. Your reaction is the real enemy. It isn't the insult that breaks you. It's the reaction that follows. You cannot control the world, but you can always control your response. And that's where your real power lies, not in changing others, but in mastering yourself. You've seen it how quickly a man loses his power the moment he reacts from impulse. One careless word, one moment of anger, and years of respect vanish. But here's the truth. No one remembers the insult. They remember how you responded. So, how do you keep yourself calm when everything inside you is screaming to strike back? First, you train. Like a soldier preparing for war, you rehearse restraint in small moments. When someone interrupts you, breathe. When someone disagrees, listen. When someone attacks, observe. These are your drills. Picture this. You're at a gathering and someone mocks your work. You could snap, but instead, you look at them calmly, nod, and say nothing. Everyone expects an explosion, but they witness control. That moment, it plants your image as unbreakable in every mind watching. Do you react from pride or purpose, from fear or from vision? Because those who live with vision don't have time for petty battles. They know every reaction costs something, and they've decided not to waste their wealth of energy. If you want to rise, train your mind to pause, to see past the now and ask, is this battle worth my dignity? When you begin choosing your responses instead of handing them away, you start winning, silently, steadily, and with authority. Every time you flinch, you lose ground when you flinch. Mentally, emotionally, or physically, you send a message, I am not ready. And life, like a strict teacher, will test you again and again until you stop flinching, until you stand tall, take the blow, and move forward as if nothing touched you. There's a difference between being numb and being unshaken. The unshaken man still feels, but he refuses to be owned by the feeling. That's the key. Not denial, but dominance over emotion. Why is this important? Because your enemy isn't always the world. It's your nervous system, your habits, your trained responses to fear, discomfort, or challenge. Every flinch is a muscle memory formed by past weakness, and now it's time to rewire it. So how do you stop flinching? Expose yourself on purpose. Walk into discomfort. Speak when your voice trembles. Look people in the eye even when you feel uncertain. And most importantly, hold your position when the world expects you to retreat. Imagine this. You're rejected. Again, the door closes. But instead of shrinking, you square your shoulders, breathe, and knock on the next door. No pause, no sigh, just movement forward. That's how flinching dies, by starving it of attention. Ask yourself this. How many moments have you lost to hesitation? How many chances slipped past while you flinched? Enough. The time has come to stop ducking and start standing. The next time life swings at you, don't move. Smile. And let the world learn what a calm mind can endure. Learn to be calm when no one else is. In every room, there's always one man who sees clearly, not because he has all the answers, not because his voice is the loudest, but because his mind is still. In a world that rushes to speak, to argue, to be seen, he does something unusual. He waits. His calmness cuts through the chaos like a lighthouse in fog. People don't always understand it, but they feel it. And in time, they follow it. Because calmness in this noisy, panicked world is a kind of greatness all its own. You were never meant to mirror the madness around you. That is the path of the ordinary man. He panics when others panic. He speaks just to fill silence. He lets the temperature of the room control his own. But your journey is different. Your power begins not when you conquer others, but when you conquer your own inner storm. When everything around you spins, and yet you do not. That's when true clarity begins. But let's not pretend it's easy. How does a man stay calm when everything inside him wants to lash out, break down, or escape? It begins with recognition. You must be honest about the war inside you. You must feel the tension rise, and instead of becoming it, you observe it. Breathe deeper, sit back, refuse to be baited by the noise. You don't win by shouting louder. You win by seeing clearer. And no man can see clearly while drowning in his own reaction. Imagine, you're in a heated meeting. Accusations fly. Pride swells in the room like a fire. Everyone scrambles to be right. And yet, you say nothing. Not because you are passive, but because you are waiting, watching, measuring. Then, when the moment is right, you speak just one sentence and the room stops. That's the force of calm. It doesn't push. It pulls. It commands attention not with noise, but with weight. Think of the times you joined the storm. You let anger drive your words. You reacted too fast. And what did it cost you? A relationship? A decision? Your own peace? Those were not failures of intellect. They were failures of calm. You didn't need more knowledge. You needed more silence inside. From now on, train yourself. When pressure rises, pause. When insult comes, smile. When you want to yell, breathe. Let others break themselves trying to be heard. You, be the one who doesn't flinch. Be the one who remains steady when no one else can. Calmness is not weakness. It's strategy. It's power. It's leadership. So when the next storm comes, and it will, ask yourself one thing. Will I join it, or will I rise above it? Because in every room, there's one man who sees clearly. Let it be you. Pain doesn't mean you're losing. You've been conditioned to flinch at the first sign of pain, to retreat, to believe that if it hurts, you must be doing something wrong. The world whispers that comfort is the goal, that ease is success. But what if that's the greatest lie you've ever swallowed? What if pain isn't punishment, but preparation? What if the ache you feel in your body, in your heart, in your spirit is not a warning sign to stop, but a signal to keep going? The man who rises is not the man who hides from pain. He's not the man who waits for life to be soft. He's the one who walks into discomfort and learns to see it differently. He trains his mind to reinterpret what others fear. While most see pain as suffering, he sees it as shaping. Others break under the weight, he builds muscle. Others whine, he works. Not because he enjoys it, but because he understands it. He knows pain has a purpose. But how do you act like you're not hurt when your insides are screaming? When your back is tight, your eyes burn, your heart feels crushed by the weight of failure? You don't pretend it's not there. You look through it. You remind yourself that pain is not permanent. It's not a prison sentence. It's a message. It says you're alive. You're not coasting anymore. You're becoming. Imagine this. You're chasing something bigger than yourself, a goal that matters. The hours are long. The pressure is real. Your muscles ache. Your energy drains. And yet, instead of folding, you rise taller. You straighten your spine. You embrace the strain. Why? Because now you know this is not the end of you. It's the making of you. The very pain that once made you question your path now becomes the proof that you're walking it. Pain, when understood, becomes a kind of sacred fire. It burns away the weak version of you, the quitter, the complainer, the coward. What remains is forged in endurance, solid, steady, capable of carrying what soft men cannot. That's who you're becoming. Not just someone who survives pain, but someone who uses it, who turns every bruise into a blueprint, every scar into strength. So now the question is no longer, how do I escape this pain? It's, what is this pain shaping in me? What will emerge once I outlast this moment? Because if comfort made you who you are, you'd still be stuck in the same place. But pain has a way of breaking the shell you outgrew long ago. Don't run from it. Don't resent it. Welcome it. Because on the other side of pain is not just a stronger man, but an unshakable one. Stop needing to be understood. One of the most invisible yet deepest forms of pain is the ache of being misunderstood. You speak from your heart, you reveal your dreams, you try to explain your stillness, and still, they look at you as if you're speaking another language. You make decisions that are true to your purpose, but they see rebellion. You choose silence, but they label it pride, and so you defend. You explain. You over-explain. You become a translator of your own soul, just to earn a nod of approval. But what does it cost you? Slowly, you trade clarity for validation. You lose the sharpness of your vision, trying to be seen through blurry lenses. The truth is simple, though hard to accept. The man who needs to be understood by everyone will always be controlled by them. His peace will be a fragile thing, shattered by each raised eyebrow, each dismissive laugh, each moment of being overlooked. But greatness has never come from consensus. It has come from conviction. Not everyone sees what you see. Not everyone is meant to. Some are blind to your frequency because they were never wired to receive your signal, and that's okay. You're not here to beg for their understanding. You're here to build. So, instead of chasing approval, chase consistency. Let your actions repeat themselves with such discipline that they form a trail of evidence in your work, in your craft, in your silence. You do not need to convince people of your worth. You need to become undeniable. And that doesn't come from shouting louder. It comes from walking straighter, quietly, steadily. But how do you let go of that pull, the deep, almost childlike urge to be seen, to be appreciated, to be praised? You replace it with something stronger, certainty. You begin to value peace more than applause. You stop trying to prove and start trying to progress. You tell yourself, one day, your results will say what your voice could never explain. One day, your presence will speak for you. But for now, let your silence be the storm that builds everything behind the curtain. Imagine this. You're walking a lonely path. Friends fall away. Family doubts you. Your ideas are mocked. Your potential dismissed. You feel invisible. And yet, each morning you show up. You keep working. You keep building. While they gossip, you grind. While they laugh, you learn. And one day, the house you built in silence will stand so tall that they'll come knocking, asking, how did you do it? And you'll smile, not out of arrogance, but out of peace, because the answer was always there, hidden in the quiet, in the consistency, in the refusal to quit just because they didn't clap. So ask yourself honestly, are you building for applause, or are you building for legacy? Applause fades. Legacy lasts. Applause is given. Legacy is earned. If legacy is your aim, you must train yourself to walk without needing company, to lead without needing agreement, to trust the path even when no one else does. And that kind of man, He doesn't beg to be understood. He simply becomes the kind of man the world eventually has no choice but to understand. Silence is not weakness, it's mastery. When someone offends you, every muscle in your body tightens. The heart races, the mind flashes with comebacks, defenses, sharp retorts, crafted in split seconds. You feel the sting of their words and your instinct screams to speak, to defend your dignity, to retaliate, to assert control. But the greatest strength you can ever show in that moment is to do nothing, to say nothing, not from fear, not from weakness, but from power, true, disciplined, grounded power. Because silence, when chosen, is not a lack of response. It's the most strategic response there is. It's the refusal to be pulled into someone else's chaos. The man who can stay silent in the face of insult is not passive. He's in command. The man who needs to lash out, to scream back, to prove his worth through volume, is still ruled by ego. But the one who stands calm, who lets the moment pass without reacting, has mastered something far more rare, the ability to govern himself. You've been told that if you don't speak up, you'll be seen as weak, that if you don't defend yourself, you'll be trampled on. But that is the belief of those who confuse noise with respect. Respect is not something you earn by being the loudest in the room. It's something you command by how little you're affected by the noise around you. The man who speaks less is often the one who sees more. He doesn't react because he doesn't need to. His value is rooted too deep to be shaken by the surface waves of other people's opinions. But how do you reach that level of silence? How do you stand still when everything inside you wants to explode? It begins with understanding that silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Speaking from anger is like firing an arrow while blindfolded. You may hit something, but you'll rarely hit what matters, and you'll often cause more damage than the offense ever did. Learn to pause, not out of submission, but strategy. Learn to ask, does this response serve my purpose or just my emotion? Picture this. You're standing in a crowd. Someone tries to humiliate you publicly. The eyes around you wait for your reaction. The world expects heat, drama. But instead you pause, you breathe, you nod slightly, maybe even smile, and walk away. That choice, that silence, will ring in their ears longer than any sharp word you could have hurled, because it's unexpected, because it shows you don't need the fight to win, because it shows you're untouchable, not because no one attacks, but because their attacks can't reach you. And in that moment, you become the man others start to notice differently, not because you shouted, but because you didn't have to. That kind of restraint creates gravity. The room leans toward you. They begin to see that you are not governed by the moment, you own it. Now ask yourself, how many of your past regrets came from things you didn't say? Likely few, but how many came from words spoken in haste, in anger, in pride? Too many to count. And how many victories, quiet, internal, dignified, were born from the moments you said nothing, from the times you let the insult pass and chose instead to keep your power, your presence, your purpose? Understand this. The world plays games. It baits you. It pokes, it provokes. It thrives on reactions. But once you master silence, you stop playing by its rules. You redefine the rules. You become unpredictable, unshakable. People won't know how to manipulate you because you've taken back control, not of them, but of yourself. So next time someone tries to pull you into their storm, stay rooted in your center. Let them shout. Let them assume. Let them reveal who they are. And you, let your silence reveal who you've become. Emotional control is the greatest wealth. Most men spend their lives chasing things they can hold in their hands. Money, admiration, approval, status. They grind, they hustle, they measure their worth by what others can see. But in doing so, they overlook the most valuable treasure of all, emotional control, the ability to feel everything and yet not be ruled by any of it. That, more than anything, separates the man who merely survives from the man who owns his life. Because here's the truth, the undisciplined man is always a slave. No matter how wealthy he is, no matter how respected, if his mood can be hijacked by an insult, if his peace can be shattered by a comment, if his mind collapses under the weight of his own impulses, he is not free. He is controlled by anger, by fear, by desire. And no crown in the world can cover that kind of weakness. But the man who commands his emotions, he cannot be shaken. He can walk through fire with grace, through betrayal with clarity, through temptation with stillness. Why? Because his feelings may rise, but they do not reign. He is not cold or numb. He simply understands that emotion is a signal, not a master. That every urge doesn't deserve a response. That every wave doesn't require surrender, that silence often holds more power than reaction. So how do you begin the process of emotional mastery? It starts not with suppression, but with observation. When the heat rises in your chest, when the old instinct to lash out flares up, don't rush to bury it. See it, feel it, name it. Stand with it like a man who's staring at a wild animal. Not to run, not to provoke, but to understand. Ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Is it a signal I need, or just noise I've been trained to obey? You'll be surprised to learn how much of your emotional life is simply habit. You got angry not because it was necessary, but because you've always gotten angry in that situation. You felt hurt not because you were truly wounded, but because your pride was conditioned to expect something else. Emotion, when unconscious, becomes a script you didn't even write. But once you see it, you can edit it. Picture this. Someone makes a decision that affects you unfairly. It wasn't right. It wasn't just. The old you would have stormed in, slammed the table, demanded retribution. But this time, you stop. You take a breath. You do not abandon what you feel, but you hold it. You analyze. You think, what's my goal? What's my best move? And then you act, not from heat, but from direction. That moment, that shift from impulsive to intentional, is the beginning of emotional wealth, and like financial wealth, it compounds over time. Because when you stop wasting your energy reacting, you start building. The energy you once spent arguing, you now spend creating. The hours you gave away to resentment, you now reinvest into discipline, focus, and presence. The relationships that once cracked under emotional storms now deepen through your calm. Emotional control doesn't make you cold, it makes you precise. Dangerous in the right way. Like a swordsman who only draws his blade when he must, and never when provoked by noise. Now ask yourself honestly, what is emotion costing you? How many mornings have been ruined by yesterday's anger? How many opportunities lost because pride wouldn't let you listen? How many bridges burned because your tongue moved faster than your mind? And what if you had all that time, all that energy back? What if, instead of draining yourself through reaction, you invested in building something bigger? Your focus, your skill, your character. You are not here to be a slave to every feeling that passes through you. You are here to direct it, not suppress it. Channel it. Let anger become discipline. Let sorrow become wisdom. Let frustration become fuel. Because when you stop letting the world dictate your emotional weather, you become the one who sets the temperature in every room you walk into. Choose control, choose presence. Don't mistake noise for truth. Don't let someone's ignorance become your emotional burden. And don't fight every battle just because it shows up. Save your fire for something that builds you, not burns you. Because when you master your emotions, you master your time, your choices, your relationships, your future. You become the kind of man who doesn't just respond to life, he leads it, not by force, but by command. And that, in the end, is the rarest kind of power, the kind no one can see, but everyone feels, the kind no one can give you and no one can take away. Never show the world where it hurts you. Walk into a room, and before your mouth forms a single word, you've already spoken. Your body speaks. Your presence, your posture, your expression, they all announce something louder than language. You declare your strength or your struggle without meaning to, and most of the world is watching, not to help, but to measure, to evaluate where to press, where you're strong, and, more importantly, where you're not. And if you flinch, if you frown, stammer, sigh too loud, or over-explain your worth, you've just handed them a map to your weakness. You've told them, without meaning to, exactly where to strike. Pain is not weakness. That's a myth. But putting your pain on display for people who don't care, that is. The man who learns to keep his pain sacred doesn't become less human. He becomes more powerful, because he's not leaking emotion into places that don't honor it. He's not giving ammunition to those who'll never understand what it cost him just to show up today. He protects his inner world like a fortress, not to isolate, but to preserve what matters. So how does a man act as if nothing hurts him, even when something does? It begins with discipline, not of the body, but of the face. You train your expression the way a soldier trains with his weapon, with control, precision, and purpose. Your face is not a mirror for the world to read your every feeling. It is a shield, a message, a decision. Not everyone earns the right to know what you feel. Not everyone is worthy of seeing where you ache. Imagine this. You're in a meeting, and a colleague suddenly takes credit for something you built. Your blood heats, your mind sharpens, your ego begs to respond, but your face, still, calm. composed. And that stillness, it speaks volumes. It unsettles more than a shout ever could, because it tells the room, I'm in control. And that control commands respect, not from fear, but from restraint, from that rare, unnerving calm that powerful men carry when others would erupt. This isn't about denial. It's not about numbing yourself or pretending you don't feel. You do feel. You just choose where, when, and with whom you release that weight. You no longer let the battlefield of public life become your place of healing. You separate the two. You hold your pain in private, tend to it in solitude, or with those rare souls who've earned your vulnerability, but not in the marketplace of pride, politics, and posturing, not where sharks swim, not where eyes search for any crack to exploit. Ask yourself, how many times have you shared a wound only to have it twisted back at you? How many moments of emotional honesty led not to understanding, but to judgment or even mockery? Not because your pain wasn't real, but because the listener wasn't ready to receive it, because you showed your soul to someone looking for a target, not a truth. And when that happens enough times, you learn openness is not always virtue. Sometimes it's a liability, especially among the wrong audience. So you build a new strength, one made not of silence, but of control. You don't hide, you protect. You don't suppress, you channel. And the result? You walk taller. You hold your head not in arrogance, but in composure. You no longer let the world see where you bleed, because you've learned power lies in mystery. Dignity lives in restraint. You do not owe your emotional weather to every passing face. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Because when no one knows where you hurt, no one can use it against you. And that changes the game. You stop playing defense. You stop scrambling to explain yourself. You stop giving explanations to those who don't deserve your thoughts. Instead, you become that rare kind of man whose calm unsettles, whose silence commands, and whose stillness speaks louder than complaint ever could. You are no longer read like an open book. You've become a closed vault. And only those with keys of loyalty, respect, and trust get to know what's inside. So walk into the room like the man you're becoming. Let your posture speak of quiet certainty. Let your presence radiate composure. Let your face remain unreadable, composed, still. Because behind that stillness is a fire, not chaotic, but contained. And when the day comes that you choose to speak or reveal or open up, it will be on your terms, not because you were provoked, not because you were weak, but because you decided it was time. That's not hiding, that's mastery. And in a world that feeds on emotional exposure, the man who owns his silence owns the room. Approval is the most expensive addiction. You think you need their praise, the claps, the nods, the reassuring smiles that say, you're doing great. You convince yourself that if they approve, you must be right. If they celebrate you, you must be on the right path. But here's the truth you don't hear enough. The more you seek approval, the more you hand over your authority. It starts small. You adjust your tone to avoid offense. You second-guess your instincts so others won't misunderstand. You shape your actions like clay in their hands, molding yourself into something more palatable, less true. And before you know it, you're not living your life, you're performing theirs. You think you need their praise, the claps, the nods, the reassuring smiles that say, you're doing great. You convince yourself that if they approve, you must be right. If they celebrate you, you must be on the right path. But here's the truth you don't hear enough. The more you seek approval, the more you hand over your authority. It starts small. You adjust your tone to avoid offense. You second-guess your instincts so others won't misunderstand. You shape your actions like clay in their hands, molding yourself into something more palatable, less true. And before you know it, you're not living your life, you're performing theirs. There's a quiet slavery in being liked. A man addicted to approval will always be controlled by it. He becomes like a compass with a broken needle, always spinning, always searching, never centered. He'll soften his words so he doesn't ruffle feathers. He'll bite his tongue when truth demands to be spoken. He'll laugh when he doesn't want to, agree when he shouldn't, and shrink when he's meant to stand tall. And one day, he'll look into the mirror and see a stranger staring back, a man whose edges have been worn down by too many compromises, whose fire has been smothered by the damp cloth of collective comfort. But how do you break free from that craving, the deep, almost childlike desire to be seen, understood, and applauded? You don't do it by shouting louder. You do it by getting quiet. You sit with silence. You let it stretch. You stop performing and start listening, not to them, but to yourself. You become your own audience. You stop creating for reaction and start creating for mastery. You stop chasing applause and start chasing excellence. And slowly, your internal compass begins to reset. It's not easy, because when you take a bold stand, when you say no to the crowd and yes to yourself, they will notice. They will whisper. They will mock. They will call you arrogant. They will call you difficult. But you keep building, quietly, unshaken. You don't explain. You don't defend. You don't chase them down asking for understanding, because you finally realized if understanding is a requirement for peace, you'll never have peace. Some people don't need to understand you. They need to watch you. Imagine this. You plant your flag. You choose a path that no one around you believes in. They scoff. They pull away. They label you cold. But you don't flinch. You build, day by day, quietly. And then, a year later, they return, curious, amazed, confused. How did you do it, they ask, and you'll smile, not because you need their approval now, but because you don't. And that smile, that peace, that quiet power, it came at a cost they'll never understand, because they were too busy talking while you were too busy working. Ask yourself this: how much have you sacrificed just to be accepted? How many dreams watered down? How many opinions silenced? How much truth swallowed just so you wouldn't ruffle feathers? And now that you've done it, was it worth it? Did their approval fill the hole in your chest? Or did it only make you more hollow? Here's what no one tells you. You don't need their nod. You need your own. You don't need their applause. You need your conviction. You don't need their praise. You need your integrity. Because respect, real, lasting, earned respect, doesn't come from blending in. It comes from standing out. Not in noise, but in solidity, in consistency, in the quiet strength of someone who knows who they are and no longer needs to explain it. You must learn to walk away from the applause, to let the clapping fade, to be okay with the silence that follows, because that silence, that's where your true voice starts to rise. That's where your clarity begins to sharpen. That's where you start doing work that actually matters, not because it's popular, but because it's true. And when you commit to truth over trend, mastery over approval, values over popularity, you become dangerous, unshakable, respected even by those who never liked you. And the beautiful paradox? The moment you stop needing their approval is the moment they start giving it. Because the man who stands alone, by choice, is always watched. Not because he begged for attention, but because he represents something rare. Someone who doesn't fold, doesn't sway, doesn't shape himself to fit every mold. He becomes a symbol of what others are afraid to be, and they watch, silently, secretly. Some envy, some admire, all notice. So take the praise when it comes, but never depend on it. Let it pass through you, not define you. Because the moment you build yourself around applause, you'll have to keep performing to stay relevant. But when you build from truth, from values, from inner certainty, you don't perform, you lead. And that is where real freedom begins. Make discomfort your daily guest. Every man wants to grow. He says it in different ways. I want more. I want to level up. I want to succeed. But when the moment comes that calls for discomfort, for pressure, for real sweat-soaked, nerve-wracking stretching, he flinches. He delays. He chooses convenience. And convenience is seductive. It's warm. It's easy. It asks nothing, risks nothing. But what it gives is even less. It lulls a man into stillness. It breeds softness, not just of the body, but of thought, of instinct, of character. Because growth and pain walk hand in hand. There is no transformation without trial, no sharpening without friction. The man who wants to grow must choose discomfort, not once, but daily. He must become the kind of man who wakes early when his body demands more sleep, who speaks truth when silence would keep things smoother, who stays when his instincts whisper, run. He doesn't wait for discomfort to find him. He seeks it, and not because he enjoys suffering, but because he knows the only way to make pressure stop scaring you is to face it by choice. The man who grows is the one who trains himself in the little battles, the quiet daily decisions no one sees. He lifts the heavier weight, not because he must, but because it teaches him something. He has the difficult conversation, not because he enjoys conflict, but because he refuses to live in cowardice. He holds his posture, controls his expression, disciplines his appetite, not because it's dramatic or impressive, but because it matters, because he's learning to command himself. And a man who commands himself is a man who cannot be broken. How do you act unhurt, even when life throws its weight against you? You train, not once, not occasionally, but consistently. In discomfort, you wake to it, walk with it, build with it, and through repetition, what once rattled you begins to feel familiar. It loses its edge, not because it's easier, but because you're stronger. You no longer panic when pressure knocks. You open the door and nod. You were expecting it. Picture this. You're standing backstage, about to speak to a crowd of strangers. Your palms are sweaty, your stomach tightens, every part of you wants to flee, but you don't. You breathe deep, you step forward, you speak, your voice shakes, but you finish. You walk off the stage, not as the same man, but as a slightly braver version. The second time, your hands still tremble, but less. The third time, you speak with rhythm, with weight, with ownership. What changed? Not the stage, not the crowd. You grew, not in comfort, but in resistance. Now ask yourself, what have you been avoiding? What challenge have you tiptoed around, hoping it might disappear on its own? The hard conversation, the dream you shelved because of fear, the habit you know is softening you, that place where you keep saying, not today. That is the door. Behind it is the very transformation you claim to want. Discomfort, left uninvited, becomes a tormentor. It shows up as regret, as restlessness, as slow erosion of pride, but discomfort, faced willingly, becomes a sculptor. It carves the man you are meant to become. It strips away the lies you've told yourself, the excuses you've protected, the softness that's crept in through years of avoiding what's hard. And what's left? Stone, muscle, steel, not in body alone, but in spirit. Growth doesn't happen at your convenience. It doesn't show up on calm days when you feel ready. It comes at the edge, when you're tired, uncertain, exposed. That is where you're reshaped. That is where the old version of you dies and a sharper one begins to emerge. But only if you choose to stand there, only if you choose to keep showing up. So don't wait for discomfort to force its way into your life through crisis. Invite it in before it becomes suffering. Seek it, wrestle it, train with it like a sparring partner, not an enemy. Wake up early to meet it. Take cold showers. Hold your silence when your ego wants to speak. Tell the truth even when it burns. Start the project that terrifies you. And do it again tomorrow and the next day, until discomfort is not a visitor, it is a companion. And with it, you walk into any room, any trial, any pressure, and you do not flinch. This is not about masochism. It's about mastery. It's about refusing to let your life be dictated by what feels good. It's about building the kind of inner structure that holds when the world doesn't. Because life will not spare you hardship. It doesn't matter how cautious, how polite, how liked you are. Storms will come, and when they do, the man who has trained in pressure will not collapse. He will rise. He will carry weight others drop. He will act unhurt, not because he feels nothing, but because he has trained through everything. So remember this, discomfort is not the enemy. It is the test, the teacher, the path. Invite it in and let it do its work. Let it carve you, sharpen you. Strip away every excuse, every inch of softness, every place you've been hiding. You were never meant to stay untouched. You were meant to be forged, and discomfort is the fire. Let time be your voice. You want to speak. You want to correct the false stories, the careless words, the quiet dismissals. You want to defend your name, your vision, your effort, because it stings. Being misunderstood, being mocked, being counted out before you've even had the chance to show the full measure of who you are. And so everything in you wants to rise, to fight back, to explain yourself. But sometimes the strongest move, the wisest, most commanding choice you can make is to say nothing, to let the silence speak. And let time do the talking. Because time doesn't lie. It doesn't play politics. It doesn't need permission. It reveals. It uncovers. It confirms. And it silences every critic who once rolled their eyes when your dream was just an outline in your mind. You see, the loudest man in the room often says the least in the long run. Because while he's busy performing, defending, justifying, posturing, the wise man is building, quietly, relentlessly. He knows that in the end, results speak with more authority than any words ever could. When you're misjudged, misread, or outright mocked, the temptation is to explain, to fire back, to prove they're wrong right now. But real strength doesn't panic when it's underestimated. It doesn't scramble to correct those who don't yet understand. It stays steady. It continues the work because it knows time will reveal everything. The seed you've planted in silence, it doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be nurtured, watered. given time to break through the soil, and once it does, it cannot be ignored. Picture this. You've been overlooked for months, maybe years, passed over, counted out. The people who once spoke highly of you have grown silent, or worse, they've moved on without you. The spotlight is elsewhere, but you don't chase it. You don't beg to be noticed. You build quietly, with grit, with focus. You stay on your path, not for their applause, but for your own standard. And then one day, without a word, your success walks into the room before you do. It announces you before you even arrive. And suddenly, the ones who doubted you, they remember. They watch, they ask, but you don't need to say a thing, because the work already spoke. This is the power of patience, the discipline of restraint. You don't need to correct every rumor or prove every point, because if you do, if you respond to every insult, every whisper, every jab, you'll waste the energy you need to build. You'll trade your focus for attention, and attention fades. But the man who waits, who keeps working in silence while others talk, he becomes undeniable, not by force, not by explanation, but by results, by quiet, consistent execution. So ask yourself honestly, are you trying to prove your worth too soon? Are you giving away your peace just to be validated now? What if the delay is your advantage? What if silence today leads to admiration tomorrow? It's easy to forget in the moment, but the applause you earn after being doubted always sounds louder. It carries weight, because you didn't ask for it. You earned it. Let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them think you've stalled or failed or disappeared. You know the truth. You know it's growing underground. And here's the thing. They don't. They can't, because true growth doesn't make noise. It doesn't announce itself every step of the way. It's quiet, humble, but powerful beyond words. There is a storm building inside the man who has been overlooked and stayed disciplined. There is a quiet thunder rising in the one who didn't defend himself, but built himself. And when time finally speaks on his behalf, it won't be with a whisper. It'll be with thunder, with undeniable presence, with results that shake the room. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to explain your decisions to those who were never meant to understand them. You don't need to rush your emergence. The oak tree doesn't apologize for taking longer than the weed. It knows what it's becoming, and so should you. Hold the line. Keep building. Stay silent when silence protects your peace. Time is your ally if you stay the course. If you keep planting, watering, growing, and don't hand over your energy to the critics. Don't trade your long game for a short validation, because when time finally speaks for you, when the work you've done in the dark steps into the light, it will speak with the kind of force no argument can match. And in that moment, the silence you chose, the restraint you held, the patience you practiced, will all make sense. You'll see that what felt like being ignored was actually protection. What felt like delay was preparation. What felt like being counted out was just the pause before your breakthrough. You don't need their permission. You don't need their understanding. You just need your work, your focus, your faith. Stay the course, trust the process, and let time do what it always does. Reveal what's real. Choose dignity over drama. There will always be drama around you. That's the nature of the world. Some people thrive on chaos the way a man thirsts for water in the desert. They stir conflict not because it's necessary, but because it gives them a sense of importance. It draws eyes, it makes noise. And the more you rise, the more of this noise you'll attract. Not because of anything you did wrong, but simply because your composure threatens their comfort. Your silence unsettles them. Your refusal to engage leaves them exposed. And so they poke, they provoke, they pull. If you're not disciplined, you'll get pulled in, not because you care, but because reaction is tempting, especially when your pride is touched. But the man who lives as if nothing hurts him doesn't chase noise. He doesn't need to clap back or outwit every jab. He understands something most people never learn. Dignity is the strongest form of dominance. And dignity is quiet. Dignity walks away, not because it is afraid, but because it's above the argument. The truly powerful don't play in the mud. They don't lower their voice to be heard by people who refuse to listen. They walk a higher road, and that road is not crowded. So how do you carry yourself with that strength when everything inside you wants to retaliate? When someone questions your character, when they try to humiliate you in front of others? You draw a higher circle around your life. You choose your peace over their poison. You say less, but you mean more. You don't explain yourself to everyone. You don't perform for every critic. You don't answer every false accusation. Why? Because you understand the difference between reaction and response. You understand that sometimes silence is not avoidance, it's authority. Picture this. You're in a room full of people, speaking your truth, minding your business. When someone tosses a cheap insult your way, it's loud, it's calculated, the room quiets. All eyes turn to you. They're waiting. Will you shout back? Will you take the bait? Instead, you smile. Not a sarcastic smirk, but the calm smile of a man who knows his worth. You finish your sentence, composed, clear, and then you move on. The insult fades. The crowd forgets the words thrown at you, but they remember your class, your control, your dignity. That's power. The world loves to measure men by their noise, but history remembers men for their discipline. Anyone can yell, anyone can fight, anyone can react. But the rare man is the one who can stand still, who can remain rooted in the face of provocation and not flinch. Because he knows, every time you engage in pettiness, you shrink your presence, you cheapen your energy, and once you trade dignity for dominance, you start losing battles that were never yours to fight in the first place. Ask yourself honestly, how much time have you wasted proving yourself to people who never deserved a response? How many nights did you carry anger that should have been left in silence? How much energy have you poured into debates that changed nothing but your own peace? You don't need to win every argument. You need to win your day. And that means not stepping into every trap that's laid at your feet. There's a difference between power and noise, between strength and struggle, between influence and impulse. And the man who understands this difference is the one who others begin to respect, not because he forced it, but because he earned it, quietly, consistently, with grace under pressure. Let them talk. Let them whisper. Let them try to bait you into their drama. Let them mistake your silence for weakness. That's not your concern. Your concern is your mission, your discipline, your growth. Let them wrestle with their own noise. Let them get dizzy, spinning in circles of conflict. You keep walking forward, head high, feet planted, mouth closed, work in progress. Because when dignity becomes your habit, peace becomes your lifestyle. And there is no man alive who can take that from you. Not the loud ones, not the bitter ones, not even the powerful ones. Peace is earned in quiet decisions, the decision to stay calm, to walk away, to let your results speak instead of your rage. That's a kind of power that can't be faked and can't be shaken. So next time someone tries to humiliate you, insult you, belittle your journey, don't play their game. Don't trade your composure for temporary satisfaction. Don't let their chaos become your climate. Remember who you are. Remember what you're building. Smile, finish your sentence, and move on. Because in the end, the insult will fade, the jab will be forgotten, but your dignity, that will echo. And those who once laughed will watch. Those who mocked will remember. And the very people who thought you were too soft, too quiet, too calm will see that you weren't weak, you were simply too powerful to be distracted. Let your silence be your sword, let your peace be your armor, and let your life, not your lips, be the loudest thing in the room. Power belongs to the one who waits. The strongest man in the room isn't the loudest. He isn't the one who jumps in first with an answer, or the one who forces the spotlight onto himself. His strength lies in his stillness, in the way he listens more than he speaks, in the way he observes before he engages, in the way he waits, not because he's uncertain, but because he is calculating. Waiting, in a world that equates speed with success, is often mistaken for hesitation. But true waiting, the kind that's rooted in discipline and purpose, is not weakness. It's power, wearing a quiet face. The man who waits understands something most overlook. Timing is everything, not just in war or business, but in life itself. Move too fast and you trip over what you didn't take time to see. Speak too soon and you give away more than you needed to. React too quickly and you play the game by someone else's rules. But the one who waits sees the whole board. He doesn't just see what's happening. He understands why. He doesn't just watch people's words. He studies their patterns. And because he waits, he moves with clarity while others stumble in confusion. In a world obsessed with immediacy, instant answers, instant reactions, instant gratification, the man who can delay becomes rare, and anything rare becomes powerful. We live in a culture where slowness is condemned, where silence is mistaken for emptiness, where waiting is seen as falling behind. But the truth is, when you wait, you don't fall behind, you rise above. Because while the world rushes to act, to prove, to be first, You sharpen, you gather, you align. But how do you train yourself to wait in a world that's always pushing you to rush? You start where no one sees. You build patience in the shadows. You pause before you speak, especially when emotion is high. You breathe before you decide, especially when pressure is heavy. You let silence stretch, even when it feels awkward, because silence teaches you to listen deeper. You practice being calm when everyone else is reacting. And slowly that calm becomes your default, not because you're passive, but because you're in control. Patience is not a gift you're born with, it's a habit you forge, and the more you practice it in small things, waiting a little longer before responding to a message, taking a full day to think before making a decision, observing instead of jumping in, the more natural it becomes in the big moments, moments where everything is at stake, moments where everyone's watching, moments where one impulsive move could cost you something you can't get back. Picture this. You're offered a shortcut. Everyone else takes it. They rush ahead, laughing, confident, certain that faster is better. But you hesitate, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You study the ground. You notice what they didn't. You choose the longer path, the harder one. You take the time to build your foundation, brick by brick. No applause, no crowd, just quiet, consistent effort. And then, weeks later, months maybe, the dust settles. The shortcut collapses. Those who rushed are scattered. And you're just getting started. Stronger, sharper, unshaken. Because power doesn't belong to the man who moves first. It belongs to the man who moves last, with precision, the one who's not rushed by noise, the one who's not baited by urgency, the one who responds not out of impulse but out of intention. The man who waits doesn't wait forever. He simply waits until it's right. Now look back at your life. How many of your setbacks were born not from actual failure, but from haste, from acting before you understood the whole picture, from speaking before the room was ready to listen, from reacting when you should have remained still? What would have happened, really, if you had waited one more day, one more hour? How much damage could you have avoided? How much stronger would your decision have been? The discipline of waiting is not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right thing at the right time. It's active. It's intentional. It's the refusal to be moved by panic, by pressure, by popularity. Because when you rush to meet the world's tempo, you lose your rhythm. You forget your pace. But when you trust your own timing, your movement becomes a force, strategic, focused, irresistible. So let others scramble for quick wins. Let them measure themselves by how fast they can move. You measure yourself by how well you move. Let them speak to be heard. You speak to be remembered. Let them run toward everything. You move toward what matters. Waiting is not inactivity. It's preparation. It's positioning. It's power conserved, not power withheld. And when the moment comes, when the ground is firm, when the target is clear, when the move is yours to make, you strike, not with noise, but with impact. Because the man who waits not out of fear, but out of faith is the man who leads. Faith in his path, faith in his process, faith that what is meant for him will come, and that no moment of silence is wasted if it's used to sharpen the sword. So wait, watch, listen, prepare, and when your time comes, move like thunder. Rejection builds the man who can't be broken. You will be told no. You will hear it in boardrooms, in unread messages, in the cold silence of being ignored. You will be turned away, not because you're not worthy, but because most people can't see what you see. You will be misjudged by strangers, sometimes even by friends. You'll be overlooked by those who should have noticed. You'll be criticized by those who haven't built a fraction of what you're trying to build. This is not a flaw in the path. This is the path. The price of aiming higher than most ever dare is that you walk roads most will never understand. But what separates the great from the forgotten is not talent, nor luck, nor applause. It's how they handle rejection. Because rejection is a universal language, it speaks to every dreamer. It meets you at the door, arms crossed, asking, "Do you really want this, or were you just hoping it would come easy?" Most turn away at that door. Most hear no and assume it means never. But the ones who rise, they listen differently. They hear no, and they think, not yet. They feel the sting, yes, but they don't stop. They adjust their footing, they sharpen their tools, and they keep walking. Rejection does not define you unless you let it. It is not a final judgment. It's not a mirror showing you who you are. It's a test of how deeply you believe in something no one else can see. It challenges your hunger, your grit, your stamina. It asks you again and again, are you serious about this, or are you just pretending? The strongest men you admire, the legends, the icons, the leaders, they all share one thing. They learn to use rejection not as fuel for anger, but as pressure to grow. Because when a door slams in your face, you have two choices. You can shrink or you can strengthen. You can internalize the rejection and wear it like a wound, or you can study it, refine your approach, and come back better. Every no you receive has the potential to shape your yes if you let it teach you instead of torment you. So how do you act unhurt when the world shuts a door you were ready to walk through? You stop taking rejection personally. You stop seeing it as an insult and start seeing it as instruction. You tell yourself, this is redirection, this is refinement, this is training. You begin to thank the closed doors, not because you enjoy them, but because they build something inside you that no easy yes ever could. They build the strength to knock again, and harder, and more prepared. Imagine this. You have an idea, a vision. You pitch it to someone, maybe someone you admire, someone you thought would understand. They laugh, they wave it off, they say you're reaching too far. And yes, it stings because you were vulnerable. You exposed a piece of your heart. But here's the difference. You don't stay hurt. You move. You go to the next door. You ask again and again. You keep going, not because you enjoy rejection, but because what you're building is bigger than your ego. And one day, the same people who said no, they come back. They ask to be part of it. They say, I always knew you had something, but you'll know the truth. You'll remember the silence, the doubt, the rejection, and you'll smile, not in bitterness, but in peace, because it didn't break you. It built you. Ask yourself honestly, have you let rejection reroute your purpose? Have you buried dreams because a few people didn't believe in them? Or have you let rejection refine your plan? Shape it, sharpen it, stretch it. Because rejection has a strange power. It reveals who's serious. It shows you the cracks in your foundation. It burns away the parts of you that were still unsure, still dependent on applause. And what's left? Someone who's dangerous. Someone who doesn't fold just because the room didn't clap. Rejection isn't pleasant. It's not meant to be, but it is useful. It exposes your soft spots. It tests your resilience. It demands a decision. Will you keep going, or will you quit now that it's hard? Because if you only move forward when doors swing open easily, you'll never get far. The biggest doors are the hardest to unlock, and sometimes you don't need them to open. You need to build a new one. Let rejection build you. Let it challenge you. Let it strip away every illusion, every excuse, every piece of you that was still waiting for permission. Let it prove to you how badly you want what you say you want. Because a man who stops fearing rejection is a man who becomes unstoppable. When rejection no longer shakes your identity, you walk differently. You ask differently. You live differently. You don't crumble when they say no. You collect data. You learn what didn't work. You reframe. You recalibrate. And you knock again. And here's what most don't see. Every no sharpens the blade. Every door that closes strengthens the knock. You learn patience. You learn persistence. And above all, you learn faith. Faith in what you're building, even when no one else can see it yet. Because greatness doesn't bloom in applause, it blooms in silence, in rejection, in nights where you wonder if you're crazy for believing so deeply in something that no one claps for yet. And then, one day, it happens. Not all at once, but the doors begin to open. The respect comes, the recognition follows, and they say, he came out of nowhere. But you know better. You came from rejection. From being told no and showing up anyway. So the next time someone turns you away, look them in the eye and thank them silently. Because they just gave you another rep, another scar that will harden into strength, another piece of proof that you can't be broken by opinions. Keep knocking, keep moving. Let rejection polish your vision until it's undeniable. And remember, you are not here to be accepted by everyone. You are here to become undeniable to yourself. Once you believe that, no can stop you. Rise without announcement. Most people want to be seen rising. They want recognition not at the end of the journey, but from the very first step. They crave the audience, the validation, the claps that come with even the hint of progress. They post updates, announce intentions, declare goals, not always because they're committed, but because they want the appearance of movement. They mistake visibility for value. But the most powerful men, the ones who make real impact, don't rise that way. They don't call attention to themselves while they're still building. They rise in silence, step by step, with no spotlight, no noise, no need for applause. They move like shadows, quiet, purposeful, And by the time anyone notices them, it's already too late to stop them. To act as if nothing hurts you doesn't mean pretending you feel nothing. It means not handing the world a front row seat to your inner war. It means building your empire in silence. It means making progress without explaining it, healing without broadcasting it, and growing without asking anyone to witness it. You let your silence become your strength. Your routine becomes your rebellion. Your focus becomes your fire. How does a man do that in a world that rewards noise? How does he begin to rise without needing attention to fuel him? He turns inward. He learns to wake before the sun, not because someone is watching, but because he is. He learns to keep his own promises, not for praise, but for power. He picks up the book, lifts the weight, faces the mirror, not to show off, but to transform. He stops telling people about his next move and starts making it, quietly, consistently, in the dark. This kind of man understands something rare. What's built in silence lasts longer, because it's not held together by applause, it's held together by discipline. It doesn't shake under criticism, because it was never fed by validation. It's not a performance, it's a process. And that process doesn't need an audience. It needs commitment. Imagine this. Months go by and you don't post a single thing. No grand declarations, no updates, no explanations, just you and the work. You train, you study, you build, you break, you rebuild. You push through doubt without a cheer squad. You keep going day after day in complete silence. Then one day, without announcement, your life shifts. A promotion, a business launch, a change in how you speak, how you walk, how you carry yourself. And people notice. They whisper. They ask, where did this come from? But they won't understand. Because they didn't see the early mornings, the missed parties, the late nights, the sacrifices, the pain, the process. They weren't there when you were empty, confused, questioning everything, but choosing to show up anyway. All they see now is the result, but you know what it took. That's the beauty of silent growth. No one can take it from you, because no one gave it to you. You earned every inch, every breath. Every inch of respect now attached to your name was forged in silence, in the hours no one applauded, in the choices no one saw, in the rooms no one entered with you. Now ask yourself, are you chasing growth or the appearance of it? Are you working because you want to evolve or because you want to be seen evolving? Are you sharing because you're proud of your path or because you need others to validate it? These are hard questions, but they cut to the truth. And the truth is this. When you chase the appearance of progress, you spend more time looking successful than becoming it. But when you chase the substance of growth, you don't need to look like anything. You become everything. What would happen if you stopped announcing your goals and just lived them? What if your only proof was your discipline? What if your only motivation was who you're becoming, not who's watching? You would find a different kind of fuel, a quieter one, but more powerful. You'd become consistent not because someone's clapping, but because you refuse to quit. You'd become dangerous in the best way. Unshakable, independent, unstoppable. And make no mistake, when you stop announcing, you start advancing. When you no longer feel the need to talk about it, you free up the energy to actually do it. No more wasted words. No more false starts. Just forward motion. Silent steps that shake the ground without warning. The world is loud. It rewards those who shout, but it follows those who build. And the man who rises in silence becomes something few ever become. A force that doesn't ask to be seen, a force that cannot be denied, because by the time he arrives, his presence is undeniable. He doesn't walk in explaining where he's been. He walks in different, and everyone feels it. So turn inward, do the work, hold your tongue, build in silence, and let the silence stretch longer than is comfortable, because that silence, it will do something nothing else can. It will forge a new version of you, one that no one saw coming, and that is power. Not the kind that needs a stage, but the kind that creates its own. But you refuse to react to, you dominate. The world will try to provoke you, not by accident, but by design. Some people provoke for power, others for sport. They push, prod, and poke, not because they see weakness, but because they're searching for it. They want to know where your buttons are. They want to know if they can move you, sway you, shake you. And the moment you react, that moment, you give them a map to your emotions. You reveal where your boundaries are soft, where your discipline cracks, where your peace can be hijacked. You hand them the lever, and suddenly, without realizing it, you're no longer steering your own ship. They are. But when you stop reacting, when you choose stillness over shouting, Clarity over chaos, control over impulse, the game changes, the dynamic flips, because now they're left with nothing to feed on, no emotion to harvest, no chaos to capitalize on. The man who refuses to react doesn't just remain unaffected. He begins to dominate. Not by force, but by presence. Not because he needs control, but because he already has it internally. You see, reacting is easy. It's instant. It's emotional, but it's also surrender. It means you've let someone else dictate the rhythm of your mind. It means you've allowed them to steer your focus, your energy, your day. That's not power. It's imprisonment. But resisting the urge to react, that's a higher discipline, a more rare kind of strength. And it begins with awareness. You must remind yourself that most provocations are bait. They're not invitations to truth. They're not challenges worth answering. They're traps. Carefully laid, emotionally charged, designed not to elevate, but to entangle. So before you respond, pause. Ask yourself, what is the cost of reacting here? Is it your focus, your time, your peace, your dignity? Then ask yourself, what do they gain if I respond? If the answer is anything more than zero, don't give it. Imagine this. You're in a meeting. Someone cuts you off mid-sentence, speaks down to you, questions your intelligence with a smirk. You feel it, hot in your chest. That familiar fire, the urge to respond sharply, to reestablish dominance, to defend your pride. But instead, you stay calm. You finish your sentence not louder, but clearer. You complete your task not faster, but better, and you don't even acknowledge the insult. You let it float in the air, unsupported, unrecognized. And the one who delivered it, they deflate. Because what they came for, your reaction, they never received, and so they move on. Not because you lost, but because you didn't play. That's real power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, the kind that holds posture in the face of ego and says, I don't bend for noise. Now ask yourself, how many times have you empowered someone else just by reacting? How many hours have you lost to arguments that didn't matter? How many moments of clarity were fogged up because someone pushed you just enough to tip you out of balance? The truth is, they never had power. They had your permission, and you gave it to them the second you got pulled into their storm. But what if you learned to ignore it, not out of weakness, not out of fear, but out of choice? What if you decided that not every insult deserves your response, that not every comment requires correction, that some people don't need to be proven wrong, they need to be outgrown, because what you react to owns you, but what you rise above, you master. And mastery means walking away not because you lost, but because you refuse to lose yourself. It means keeping your fire for the things that build you, not burn you. It means staying focused on the mission while others get lost in the noise. You will be tested. People will talk. They will bait you with sarcasm. They will provoke you with gossip. They'll challenge you with ignorance. And the temptation will rise to match their energy, to fight fire with fire. But every time you resist that pull, you reinforce something stronger inside of you. You become more centered, more grounded, more unshakable. Let others be reactive. Let them exhaust themselves chasing control. You build power through restraint, through patience, through strategy. You don't flinch. You don't chase. You don't engage every spark because you've learned something they haven't. Not every fight is worth fighting, and not every opponent is worthy of your presence. This is not about being passive, it's about being precise. Knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Knowing when to act and when to observe. Knowing that the strongest man in the room isn't the loudest, but the one who can feel the fire rise and still choose not to burn. So hold your posture. Withhold your fire. Let your silence unsettle them. Let your calm confuse them. Let your discipline win battles that words never could. Because when you stop reacting, you stop giving people control over your story. And once you take that control back, fully, quietly, completely, no one can take it from you again. And that's when you realize you don't just live above their noise, you live beyond it. Act like a mountain, still, but unyielding. A mountain doesn't flinch at wind. It doesn't tremble under thunder, doesn't argue with the clouds, doesn't plead with the storm to go easy. It stands, quiet, immovable. Its power isn't in its volume, but in its presence. It doesn't need to say a word to be respected. It doesn't need to prove its strength to be known. It simply is. And in a world that thrives on noise, panic, reaction, and speed, that kind of presence is a rarity and a weapon. That is the kind of presence you must begin to develop. Calm, still, unyielding, like a mountain. You've been taught that strength means being louder, faster, more reactive, that to command attention you have to shout, that to be seen as powerful you must prove yourself constantly. But real power doesn't move that way. Real power is anchored. It doesn't chase validation. It doesn't seek applause. It doesn't waste energy explaining its worth. It knows. It lives in a body that has been trained to slow down, to breathe, to listen before it moves. And when it does move, the whole room notices. Not because it demands attention, but because it commands it. You don't need to respond to every threat. You don't need to react to every slight. Some men carry their might in motion. They're active, fast, aggressive when needed. But others, those who often hold the deepest power, carry it in stillness. They've trained their nerves to stay quiet when poked. They've built internal ground so stable that even when the world shakes, they don't. And you must learn both. You must be able to move like fire and stand like stone. But first, master stillness. So, how do you become like the mountain? You stop rushing. You stop letting urgency drive your behavior. You slow your movements, not in laziness, but in deliberation. You walk like someone who is going somewhere, not like someone who is running from something. You let your thoughts settle. You stop responding to noise with more noise. You observe before you speak. You pause before you commit. You don't chase outcomes, you attract them. Not by proving, but by becoming. Not by pleading, but by embodying. When a man truly owns himself, the world begins to move around him differently. And not because he says so, but because people feel it. Picture this. You're in a meeting. The discussion turns sharp. Tension rises. Someone throws a challenge your way. All eyes swing toward you, waiting to see what you'll do. You feel the pull, the urge to defend, to dominate, to react. But you don't. You pause, you breathe, you hold the silence for just a second longer than comfort allows. And then, with measured calm, you say one sentence. No force, no anger, just truth. And suddenly, the room shifts. Not because you raised your voice, but because you didn't. Because you were still. Because in that stillness, everyone else saw their own noise. And in your restraint, they saw real strength. This is the art of stillness. It isn't weakness. It isn't passivity. It's clarity. It's the kind of discipline that unnerves people, not because it's aggressive, but because it's unshakable. The man who has trained himself to be still, to be composed, to speak little but mean every word. He becomes a presence others cannot ignore. Not because he imposes himself, but because his calm reveals their chaos. Ask yourself, do you want to be a wave? Loud, impressive for a moment, crashing with intensity, but always pulled back, always dictated by the winds of emotion and environment? Or do you want to be a mountain, silent, immovable, present, commanding without trying? The wave is exciting, yes, but the mountain endures. The wave is watched, the mountain is respected. To be the mountain means letting the storms come without fear, letting people talk, letting critics shout, letting those around you panic, scramble, react, and choosing not to join them. It means holding your posture. It means keeping your fire where it belongs, inside, not spilling out every time someone tests you. It means making your presence felt without forcing it. And when you do speak, you speak from ground that has already been established, not from insecurity, but from certainty. This is not the path most men choose, because stillness is difficult. It takes more strength to hold your ground than to throw a punch. It takes more discipline to say nothing than to defend every blow. But the man who learns this path learns power that doesn't fade. He becomes the one others lean toward, not the center of attention, but the center of gravity. You become the one who doesn't need to shout to be heard, who doesn't need to move fast to get ahead, who doesn't need to argue to be right. You become the one who, like the mountain, doesn't explain its silence, because its presence says everything. So train yourself. Let the world rage around you. Let the winds blow. Let the storms roar. Let the noise try to move you. But you stand, speak little, observe more, move with purpose. Speak only when it counts. And when you do move, let it be like a mountain shifts. Slow, certain, and impossible to ignore. That is not weakness. That is not hiding. That is the posture of real power. And once you learn to hold it, you'll find the world no longer pulls you. You'll find you no longer live reacting to everything around you. You live above it. Unshaken, unmoved, unmistakable. Stop explaining yourself to small minds. Every time you explain yourself to someone who's already made up their mind about you, you're not winning them over. You're draining yourself. There's a hidden cost to justification. It sounds harmless, a quick defense, a short clarification, a sentence to soothe their confusion, but underneath, you're handing over something far more valuable than time. You're handing over your power. Because when you explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you're entering a game you've already lost. You're trying to plant clarity in soil that refuses to grow anything but judgment. There is a kind of man, often loud, often insecure, who will never understand your silence. He will never understand why you don't join in the gossip, why you stopped explaining every move, why you sit quietly when others demand attention. He doesn't understand ambition unless it's loud. He doesn't understand discipline unless it's announced. He doesn't understand calm unless it's forced. And that's not your burden to carry. You were never meant to be everyone's translator. You weren't made to adjust your volume just because someone else can't hear what you're building in silence. The truth is, you don't owe the world your plans. You don't owe your acquaintances your logic. You don't need to pause your progress to clarify your vision for people who are only interested in their own comfort. The higher you climb, the less explaining you owe. Because the people who matter, those who are serious, those who are watching with the right eyes, they already see. They feel the shift. They notice the change in your presence. And the ones who keep demanding an explanation, they usually aren't looking to understand you. They're looking for ammunition. They want cracks in your confidence they can poke at. They want your words so they can twist them. They want your reasoning so they can undermine it. Not all questions are sincere. Not all curiosity is innocent. So how do you act unhurt when people question your new direction, your change, your distance from who you used to be? You let them wonder. You don't hand them the script. You don't break your rhythm to narrate your transformation. You stay focused. You keep moving. And you let the silence do what words never could. Protect your mission. Because your duty isn't to satisfy their curiosity. Your duty is to your purpose. Your loyalty is to your vision. And the more you rise, the more you'll learn real power is often misunderstood. That's fine, let it be. Picture this. You've changed your habits. You've started waking early. You've stopped complaining. You've stopped gossiping. You've stopped showing up to every argument, every distraction, every invitation to mediocrity. You've become intentional, quiet, disciplined. And now people are confused. They say things like, "Why are you so quiet lately? You've changed. You think you're better, but you don't defend yourself." You don't pull out a whiteboard to explain your inner revolution. You just smile. A small one. Not out of arrogance, but out of peace. Because you finally learned. You don't need to explain a single thing. Because in time, they'll see it. The same people who doubted the silence will one day stare at the result and ask, "How did he do it?" And even then, you won't owe them an answer. That's the shift. Ask yourself honestly, how many words have you wasted trying to prove something that time could have proven for you? How much energy have you poured into defending your growth to people who never wanted you to grow in the first place? How many detours have you taken from your path just to give people peace of mind that you never owed them? You can't win the approval of those who are committed to misunderstanding your journey. And even if you could, it wouldn't be worth the price. Because every time you stop to explain, you slow down. Every time you justify, you dilute your own conviction. And over time, you start walking not with confidence, but with caution. Afraid to be misunderstood, afraid to be misread, afraid to be alone in your purpose. But real purpose is lonely. Not forever, not always, but in the beginning, absolutely. Growth doesn't come with a crowd. The breakthrough doesn't come with applause. The transformation doesn't come with understanding. It comes in quiet, in isolation, in discomfort. And if you keep waiting for permission or clarity from others before you move, you'll never move. Let them stay confused. Let them build their theories. Let them whisper. And while they do, build. While they judge, work. While they guess, become. Let your life answer their questions. Let your character correct their assumptions. Let your results embarrass their doubt. A man on a mission does not stop to explain every step of his journey. He walks. Quietly, steadily, without fanfare, without commentary, and the world eventually adjusts, not because he demanded attention, but because his silence was too loud to ignore. And when they finally ask, "Why didn't you say anything?" you look at what you've built, at who you've become, and you'll know you didn't need to. Because some things aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be witnessed. So, speak less, build more, defend nothing, walk in the certainty that your silence is not emptiness. It's energy being directed to the one place it truly matters, forward. Walk through fire without leaving ashes. A man who acts as if nothing hurts him is not pretending to be made of stone. He is not numb. He is not blind to pain. He has simply walked through the kind of fire most people run from and came out with his soul intact. He has been burned, tested, pierced by life in ways that would shatter the unprepared. But he did not break, and more importantly, he did not become what tried to break him. That kind of man, calm in crisis, silent in betrayal, composed in the face of chaos, is not cold. He is forged, like steel tempered in fire, shaped through pressure, cooled in silence. Pain did not pass him by. It chose him, challenged him, threatened to consume him whole, but he kept moving. Through disappointment, through heartbreak, through betrayal and hardship and loss, he did not come out untouched, but he came out unowned. This is the final transformation, not merely to endure, but to emerge unmarked in the places that matter most. To go through the fire but refuse to let it turn you to ash. To carry the lesson without the bitterness. To remember the blow without reliving the damage. To look at everything that hurt you and say, "You sharpened me, but you do not define me." To do that, you must first understand that fire is not the enemy. Fire is the test. It is not the pain that ruins you, it's the way you respond to it. It's how long you carry it. It's what you choose to carry. If you drag every betrayal, every insult, every heartbreak with you, showing off the scars like trophies, you haven't survived the fire, you've become it. But if you can walk through that same fire and choose your load wisely, then you begin to master your own transformation. You leave behind what weakens you. You take only what sharpens you. You carry the clarity, the boundaries, the knowledge, the stillness, and you leave the smoke, the grudge, the bitterness. You stop telling stories that keep your wounds open and start writing new ones that prove your evolution. Picture this. You faced betrayal, not a misunderstanding, not a small offense, a deep personal fracture. The kind of betrayal that years ago would have broken your spine and cracked your voice. The kind that once would have sent you spiraling, ranting, demanding justice, begging for closure, but not now, not anymore. Now you nod, you say nothing, you move forward. No speech, no performance, no retaliation. Just the quiet, deliberate forward motion of a man who has learned to let silence do what noise never could. Protect his peace. And people notice. They wait for your reaction, your outburst, your explosion, but it never comes because you've learned something most never do. You don't owe pain a performance. You don't owe betrayal your voice. You don't need to prove how deeply you were hurt. You need only to continue. Unshaken, and that quiet continuation becomes your shield. It becomes your power. It becomes the evidence that you have outgrown the damage. So ask yourself, are you still holding on to old burns? Are you dragging around ashes of fires that died years ago? Are you letting those moments define the way you see the world, the way you trust, the way you live? Or are you using those flames to forge a sharper edge? Because pain will either build you or bury you, and you choose which by what you carry. Don't collect ashes. Don't hold on to the smoke. Rise from it. And rising doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means choosing to evolve. It means deciding that your identity will not be shaped by suffering, but by how you moved through it. It means recognizing that the fire tried to take everything from you, and it failed, and that is enough. The world will keep trying to scorch you. It will throw setbacks, betrayals, losses, doubts. Let it do its worst, because now you know the secret. It's not about what the fire does to you. It's about what you do with it. Let it burn away your weakness. Let it melt your ego. Let it refine your vision. But don't let it take your soul. Don't let it twist your heart. Don't let it turn you into someone who hurts others just because you were hurt. That's not strength. That's surrender. True strength is quiet. It doesn't flinch at pain. It doesn't announce its survival. It simply endures and evolves and continues forward without explanation. It's the man who has every right to be angry, but chooses peace. Who has every right to seek revenge, but chooses progress. Who has every right to shut down, but keeps showing up. This is what it means to be unhurt, not untouched, not invincible, but undefeated. To be struck and still stand. To be cut and still love. To be burned and still build. And when others look at you and ask, how did you survive that? You won't need to answer, because they'll see it in your posture, in your discipline, in your stillness, in the way you no longer need to shout or prove or defend, in the way you carry yourself, not as someone who escaped the fire, but as someone who owns it. So let the fire come. Let life try to shake you. Let the storms howl and the winds rise and the pressure mount. And when it's done, when the smoke clears, don't come back charred. Come back shining. Because you weren't made to crumble, you were made to rise. And the world can burn around you, but if you forged your mind in the right fire, it can never burn through you. The world will keep testing you through words, actions, and silence, but you no longer owe anyone a reaction. You've learned to stand still while storms pass, to keep your power where it belongs, with you. This isn't about pretending, it's about rising above. So carry your calm like armor, let your silence speak louder than chaos. And remember, the one who cannot be hurt cannot be controlled. Walk forward, unbothered, unbreakable, unstoppable.